empathy and the power of that. But how did you make this into a business? Yes, you went into write books, and like, how did you make this into a business? And like, what is your business model?
Yeah. So I guess the first thing to say is it didn't start as a business. It
Mhm.
started as a passion. And a passion and a platform, and I still call it a platform today. Sometimes people say, "Tell me about being an entrepreneur," and I'm like, "Am I an entrepreneur? I don't know. I don't really feel. I don't know what an entrepreneur feels like, but I don't feel like one." So for me, it was always a passion and a platform that I wanted to create that people would be able to come to expand their empathy, to be able to understand more about what this is and why we need it, why our businesses need it, why our children need it, why all of us need it. And I was very lucky in that I had a full-time job for the last 5 years. So as I said, I always worked in branding and in advertising. So for the last 5 years, I have basically had two jobs. I have been doing my corporate role, which helps because you have stability and security and salary and all the S's. Um, and I was able to build this passion on the side. And there was never any conflict because teaching empathy has no impact on branding clients. But of course, as those years went on, my time became the challenge. I just no longer had the time to be on a plane to a stage in Saudi Arabia at the same time as in a client meeting for my branding business. So, in the last 6 months, I've had to separate that out. And now I do this full time. But I think, is it easy to have two jobs? No. But what it did enable me to do is that when I got to the point where I wanted to do this full time and use it to make money to sustain my life, I had so much depth because I'd been doing it for 5 years. So it wasn't like I was starting from scratch. So if you go to my LinkedIn or my Instagram or my website, as you touched on, you will see endless work. I've worked with unbelievable clients and I was able to do some of that paid, some of it free, because it wasn't my lifeblood at that time. It was passion. If Coca-Cola asked me to come speak to them about empathy, I said, sure, where's the door? I'll come in. So today, to answer your question, my business model is predominantly keynote speaking. So most of my work is in audiences and stages and speaking, and I just love it. People always ask me to get nervous. I don't get remotely nervous. I just absolutely love it. And I also do a lot of masterclasses and workshops. And I also do some executive dinners as well now. So fundamentally, the teaching of empathy into the corporate world is where I get my money. And I use that money to have a team around me that helps me continue to build the brand and all of the content that you see online, because of course I couldn't do it all on my own.
And do you also work like privately, like with CEOs, with, leaders as well? Is
Oh,
that part of what you do?
I do. I never did. It's funny. I spent like 3 years saying no. I said, no, I'm not a coach. No, I'm not a coach. And then about a year and a half ago, a CEO said to me, I don't, let me be clear. He was very blunt. He was very nice. He was very blunt. He said, let me be clear. I don't care what you are or what you aren't. I don't care what qualification you have. I would like you to work with me for a month. So I was like, okay. So I said yes.
So you're wondering the value in being a podcast guest. Think about it. You want to build your personal brand. Is it important as ever? And coming on this show allows you to do just that. You're able to leverage our audience, but not only that, you're able to leverage the content from this podcast as you clock up the hours someone spends with you. The longer time someone spends listening to your story, your solutions in the marketplace allows you to do something special. It allows you to build a community and build a brand. You can leverage the community here, but you can also leverage the content from this show to be able to use where? On LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where you're going to shine. LinkedIn is where you're going to generate leads. So whoever you are, you want to come and tell your story. You want to be able to come in and be a guest that allows you to build your brand. Link in the description, we'll get in touch. So join our waiting list to feature on the Rubasha Family Podcast.
And that did begin a bit of a ripple effect. So now I do executive coaching with senior leaders as well, in a very different format, I think, from the market. But it's not my lifeblood. I do it because I love people. But really, the core of my work is in reach. Anything with reach, right? An audience, a podcast. I write for a lot of Forbes and Harvard Business Review and the BBC. Anywhere where there's opportunity to create more empathy, I say yes.
Mm-hmm.
I say
And
yes to everything.
yeah, I love that. And just before I ask more practical steps on how leaders can apply empathy with your work, working with CEOs and leaders and the high level what are some traits that you see in common? Like, what are some traits that you see in common with high level CEOs in what they're doing, and how that can impact, the listener who's listening to this, whether they are a high level CEO or someone who aspires to be there?
Look, I mean, I think the first kind of, when you say, trend or insight, what are you seeing? The first thing, it's not necessarily a positive thing, but I see a huge amount of overwhelm. I think being a leader today, being a CEO today is a lot. And I often say this, often I'll be on like a panel on a stage with other leaders and I'll look at them and I'll say, I feel for you, right? Because once upon a time, not that long ago, a CEO was responsible for the P&L, right, the bottom line, finances, customers, and their people, culture. That was it. Now, on top of all of that, in a very volatile world in terms of, political, economic, financial reality, on top of all of that, they must have policies for diversity and inclusion and well-being and gender balance and LGBTQI and maternity leave and paternity leave and menopause leave. And there is so many things that as a CEO and as a leader today that we are meant to be specialists in order to create the workforce of today. And these are all phenomenal things to do, but it's a lot, right? So I guess the one thing that I see today from the CEOs I work with is that their role is incredibly multifaceted, that they have a wider breadth of, skill sets and responsibilities than they ever have had. Mm-hmm. And as I said, I think the trend is that it is quite overwhelming. There is a huge amount of burnout. There is a huge amount of exhaustion. And in terms of people that are aspiring to do that and perhaps do it better in the next generation, I teach a lot of self-empathy. I think, empathy has two parts: empathy for others and then empathy for yourself. And mastering that empathy for yourself, I always tell people, Segura, that to slow down, to be able to slow down is a superpower, right? It is your best way to speed up. And I think if you can take that into leadership with you and just be able to find that time to understand yourself, once you know what you need, what you want, what helps you thrive, what drives you, you are far better at leading others and making that potential overwhelm at the top feel less overwhelming and much more manageable. So I think working on yourself and your self-empathy as you go up the ranks, and you're building a personal brand, really knowing yourself and being consistent with that is magic, actually.
If you really enjoyed this video, make sure to click here, and I'm sure you're going to love that one.